Today, the readings reminds us that Jesus is the perfect high priest. And who is a priest? A priest is supposed to be a bridge between God and man. That is why the Holy Father is also called the pontiff. Pontiff comes from the word ponte, and it means abridged. So the Holy Father is the bridge between God and man. Many people, when they see the Holy Father, they see the presence of God. And that is how and what we priests are called to do. We are called to mediate the presence of God to others. Just as what we have read in today's gospel, we are told that the crowd were crushing on Jesus because he has healed many. And those who were afflicted, they went forward to touch him because they need to feel the presence of God. Because we are human beings. And so we need somehow the priest to represent God to us. And that is how also we as priests are called to do. We have the ministerial priesthood. The ministerial priesthood is not just to celebrate sacraments. That is part of it, because the priest is supposed to help us to be reconciled with God, to make Christ present in the Eucharist. So the priest, ministerial priest, is a minister, so to speak. He is supposed to be acting in persona Christi capitis as the head of Christ in the body of the church. And so the priest is important. The priest is called to be the sacrament of Jesus. And all of us, by virtue of baptism, we also share in the royal priesthood of Christ. We too are called to make him known by the way we live our life, by the way we conduct ourselves. As I've said, the point is this: at the end of the day, whether we are ministerial priests or we are just members of the royal priesthood, the greatest compliment you can get is when people say, "I think you are Jesus," or "I see Jesus in you, and I feel the presence of God in you." That is certainly a great sign of holiness, and that you have really put on Christ. And if you are so holy as Jesus was, even the unclean spirits, when they saw him, would fall down before him and shout, "You are the Son of God." So if you are so holy, you can even expose those people who the devil is hiding in them. And just like when Jesus was in the temple, he was preaching, and then somebody manifested. But so Jesus is the perfect priest because he's a man. To be a good priest, we need to be first and foremost a man. In other words, a priest is supposed to be the image of God, the sacrament of God. The only problem is this: why are we not the perfect priest? Simply because we are men. And as we read in the letter of Hebrews, we are exposed to human weakness. We all are weak. So that is the reason why we are not the perfect priest. Although we are priests of God, whether ministerial priesthood, royal priesthood, we fail to be always the sacrament of Jesus. Sometimes, yes, in good days, we are very much like Jesus because we are happy and joyful and calm. Certain days, we are irritable, angry, what we call emotionally upset. Then we don't bring Jesus to people. So when people see you, they run far away from you. So because of our human weakness, we are prone to, therefore, not always act like Jesus. So it's understandable. So to be a priest, of course, requires us. So is it good to have human weakness? In the first place, yes. Because if you are not weak, then you will be unable to feel with others. You will be unable to share the pain and the sufferings of others. That is why, thank God, God did not create angels to be priests. If angels are priests, you are gone, because the angel doesn't understand human weakness. The devil does not understand. Why are you tempted to eat this isang or this suckling pig? Why? This char kway teow no good for your health. And why must you be tempted? Because he doesn't like all these things, He's not interested. So we can only feel with people when we ourselves are tempted to sin. And we also struggle with temptation. For us, all priests, don't think we priests are not struggling. We also struggle with all the temptation, all the 7 sins that every one of us have to struggle with. So if a priest is struggling with temptation, then when you come to see him, he will also understand. And he will be, hopefully, more compassionate, able to identify with you. But then, just because I can feel with you doesn't mean to say I can help you. So you tell me, Father, I love to eat char kway teow. And then the priest say, I also love char kway teow, but also cannot resist. What's the use? Somebody can feel with you and somebody can empathize with you, but he cannot lead you out of your problem. That's why, the former Bishop Emeritus, he always say, teach the way, show the way, walk the way. If you don't walk the way, how can you show the way? How can you teach the way? You first need to walk the way. The blind leading the blind, both will go into the ditch. So that's why the priest is not the perfect person. Yes, he's trying to be like Christ, but very often ministerial priests, members of the royal priesthood like you, we fail. So sometimes, and this is where the problem lies, especially for the ministerial priesthood, because the ministerial priesthood has a high dignity in the church. He's holding a very important office. He's the head of the community. And therefore, much more is expected of the priest than of the members of the royal priesthood. And because he's the head of the community, he will have to strive to be even more Christ-like than the rest. But often we see again the failures of priests. So priests are human beings. We have the priests involved in the, what we call dishonesty, in handling money, priests who live a lavish lifestyle, they always have to dine in expensive places. So this becomes a scandal to the Christian community. And so instead of, yes, they know a priest is tempted, they all say, we know the priest is tempted, a priest is a human being like us, but he cannot make all these mistakes. He cannot be tempted into sin. So how do you reconcile? On one moment you say a priest is a human being. On the second moment is when he falls, oh, he cannot, he should not fall. That is true, he should not. But because he's a human being, he will fall, he will be tempted in some ways. And as a consequence, many people who look at the priests who have scandalized the community, sometimes they're so scandalized that they leave the church. Particularly for those people who are the priests in the high pedestal, it is too shocking and they are disillusioned. So being a human person, being human as a priest is a double-edged sword. Good on one hand because you can identify the sufferings, the struggles, temptations of others. On the other hand, you are also tempted into sin. And it's for this reason, that's why the scripture reading tells us that Jesus is the perfect high priest, because he is the perfect man. He is truly a man. In fact, he is the only true man. All of us are fake. We are trying to be the perfect man. Only Jesus is a true man. A true man does not mean who is a true man. A true man is one who is always faithful to himself, to his identity, to his calling, to his purpose in life. That is a perfect man. Who always say yes to the will of God. Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will. So, a perfect man, therefore, is a man of real integrity. He is what we call, he lives an integrated life. He sees things clearly and he does it following the will of God. That is a perfect man. So, we actually, very often, sometimes, when we sin, we say, oh, it's only human. That is not human, that is actually inhuman. Because a real human person, the ideal man should not sin. Because when God created us, he created us perfect. So we are fallen creatures. That is the reason why we are all sinners. We are fallen creatures. We are tempted to sin. Jesus was also tempted, like us all, but he did not sin. So Jesus went through all that we have gone through. He was tempted. He also suffered the consequences of people who sin, just like some of us. We got difficult people around, we have done nothing wrong, but we suffered the consequences. Jesus also suffered the consequences of the sins of others. But Jesus himself did not sin. So that's why Jesus is the perfect man. That's why Jesus could feel with us, because he had gone through. He knows what it means to lose your parent. He knows what it means to lose your child. He knows what it means to be unjustly treated. He has gone through all these things. So we cannot say that therefore Jesus do not understand. So the great thing about Jesus being the perfect high priest, he is a man, he understands us, he empathizes with us, but he himself has lived the way. So he's the one who can show the way. That's why Jesus is that bridge to God. He is one who can reconcile us with God. Before the temptation, we know very well that Jesus went through the temptations of the evil one in the desert. He was able to stand firm in his faith. He too was tempted when he was hungry. Although they didn't give him char kway teow, but they did give him a piece of bread when he had 40 days without food. The piece of bread would be, that's why we start imagining things. Perhaps Jesus was imagining the stone to be bread, because they look like bread. When you are hungry, you think that everything is, your imagination can go wild, So Jesus is the perfect high priest. And we are told, therefore, that not only he was the perfect man, Jesus has gone through what we are going through, and Jesus is the one who really revealed to us the love and the mercy of God. But that also demands that a priest really have to strive to be more and more Christ-like every day. Because we are called, so our call to holiness is not to save our souls only. Our call to holiness, and just for you true, if we want to grow in holiness, it is in order that more and more people might be able to see the Christ in us, that we can touch them by our words, by our action, sometimes just a word of consolation, encouragement can really make the person happy or find hope. The person is down, person is discouraged, just a word will do. So we are very powerful ministers of Christ if we use our gifts well, and we must be attentive to the sufferings that you have gone through. You know how one would feel when how shall I put it, when someone goes through suffering. You know how you feel, so you should be able to do that. So as I've said, try to be, we are all priests, not just, and try to manifest Christ's presence to others.